everyone, welcome back to my channel. I decided that since I do monthly wrap-ups of the books that I've read on Instagram that I would move it over to YouTube as well. So here I am, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of May. And if you're not following me on Instagram already, I'm on there as Brianna North Author, and I pretty much post every day about what it's like being an author, books I've read, promotional things for my books, and all sorts of other fun stuff. So I would highly recommend giving me a follow on there if you haven't already. This month was a little slow for me in terms of what I usually average, but that's because I had a lot of traveling going on and I didn't really find myself with a lot of time on my hands to get some reading done. But I did read a lot of really good books. I read mostly thrillers this month, and the first book that I read was Secluded Cabin Sleep 6 by Lisa Unger, I think that's how it's pronounced. This book is about three couples who take a vacation to a secluded cabin in the woods. And while they're there, it's revealed that the house has a deep, dark history, and there's a big storm, and so they're basically trapped there the whole time, and people start to go missing, there's family drama. It's honestly hard to explain really what this book is about, and I hate to say it, but I did really enjoy this book, but I struggle to really remember what this book is about because it just wasn't really that memorable to me. I've read a lot of thrillers, and I'm almost starting to find it a cliche that people go on vacation when there's a huge storm and they know that they're going to be trapped. And so it just frustrated me the whole time because I just thought, who thinks that that is an ideal vacation? This book was told in so many different perspectives, and I honestly do like that. But for this book, there were some that I don't even really understand why they had a narration in the book. Like, one of them was the owner of the cabin, the guy who built it and owns the property and, like, maintains it. But he only had short chapters here and there, and he didn't really add much to the story, so I just kind of wondered. There were 6 people at this cabin, and not every single one of those people had a perspective in this book, so I failed to understand why this guy specifically got a part in the book. I know I sound like I'm bashing this book, but honestly, I did overall enjoy it. I think I gave it something like a 3.5 star on Goodreads, and I really liked Hannah's perspective in this book because I felt like she offered a lot, and she was really concerned about her daughter back at home, and she was overall a really strong female character, and I really have a soft spot for strong female characters, and so every time the perspective switched to somebody else, I just kind of skimmed through it. I wasn't really a big fan, but once it came to her, I honestly enjoyed it a little more. So yeah, if you enjoy slower paced thrillers, this is one that I would definitely recommend. The next book that I read was Never Never by Colleen Hoover and Tarryn Fisher. Before I get into all the reasons why I love this book, I just wanted to come on here and flex that Tarryn Fisher herself commented on my Instagram post about this book, and I thought that was really cool and it made my day, and so really quickly I just wanted to brag about that. I read this book while I was on vacation in Colorado Springs. It's about 2 teenagers who are a couple, and one day they wake up and they have zero memory. They have no idea who they are to each other, and so they kind of have to work together and get their memories back and figure out what's going on, why this even happened to them. Like, why did they specifically lose their memories and no one else around them did? And it's not a spoiler, but as they slowly start to get their memories back, they learn that they're actually really toxic to each other, and something happened in their relationship and they can't remember what it is, but they get hints from their friends and family that something really bad happened. And obviously they can't tell their friends and family what's going on with themselves because they're just going to think that they're crazy. It's safe to say that I really love this book. Like, Colleen Hoover and Tarryn Fisher are 2 of my favorite authors, and so this was an easy read for me. I flew through this in like 2 or 3 days because I just really loved the concept. Like, I can't imagine waking up one day and forgetting who I am, and especially if I was hearing from other people that I was a really bad person, it would really make me curious, and it would make me really stressed out as well, thinking like, what did I even do? The only thing that I will say, and I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, so if you think that you want to read this and you don't want anything spoiled, then you can just skip ahead, but the only thing that I didn't really like about this book was that cheating was somehow justified. Like, I honestly find that that's a big pet peeve in books that I read, is that cheating is somehow made okay by whatever situation, and I don't like that. If you love YA thrillers, and you specifically love Colleen Hoover or Tarryn Fisher, I would highly recommend checking this book out because it was awesome. This next book was a little bit of a break from all the scary thrillers that I've been reading, but I read One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. I bought this book on my trip to Colorado Springs, and I read most of it in the Denver airport waiting for my flight to go home. But this book is about a 30-year-old woman named Katie who takes a solo trip to the Amalfi Coast in Italy that she was supposed to go on with her mother, but unfortunately her mother ended up passing away, so she has to go by herself. Her mother had always talked about how special of a place Italy was to her because she had gone before Katie was born, so they really, really wanted to do this together. But while Katie's there, she ends up actually running into her mother from 30 years prior. So it's like a time travel sort of situation. But while she's there, she learns a lot about who her mother was when she was in her 30s. I will say I've always wanted to go to the Amalfi Coast, and reading this book just honestly made me want to go so much more. And so I think I'm going to have to do that in the future. But I really appreciated all of the descriptions of the Amalfi Coast in this book, how well they were done. It was so amazing, and it really put me in the mood for a vacation, even though I was literally coming back from my vacation. This book really shows, like, not to take the people in your life for granted, and I felt like Katie learned a lot while she was there. And I will say, though, the pet peeve that I mentioned about the last book did happen in this book, and so that was the only thing that bothered me, but for the most part, I really loved the cozy vibes that this book gave off. If you happen to love contemporary books and traveling, then I would highly recommend this one. This next book has been on my radar for a while, and I finally got around to reading it, but it's The Chain by Adrian McKinty. This book was seriously so good. Like, I feel like I'm not going to be able to stop talking about this one for a really long time. But basically, it's about a woman who, one morning, she receives a phone call that her daughter has been abducted from her bus stop, but the only way that she can get her daughter back is that she has to kidnap a child herself. She's now sucked into a kidnapping ring that's called The Chain, and basically what happens if she doesn't abduct another child is that the people who run the chain will kill her daughter and then kill her. This book had me thinking so much because it's like, kidnapping is one of the worst things that you could do to another parent. But if it was to save your child, you would 100% do it, wouldn't you? She also has to pay this huge ransom, and then on top of that, to make things worse, the same morning that she gets the call that her daughter's been kidnapped, she gets a call from her oncologist as well saying that they think her breast cancer is back. So she has to push that whole diagnosis aside while she fights to save her daughter's life. Like, could you imagine? This book had so many twists and turns, and the worst part is that she wasn't allowed to go to the police because they would also kill her and her daughter. So while she was going through one of the worst things in her life, she wasn't allowed to tell anybody. What was interesting about this book was that it was told in two different parts. So the first part was during the whole chain incident, and then the second part was showing the aftermath of the chain, so how it affected them. It's been made clear that they're never allowed to talk about what happened, even years and years after they've been in the chain. The chain is always watching, they're monitoring their computer usage, they're stalking them. So they're never ever allowed to tell anybody what happened to them because there's always that risk that the chain is going to come back and kill their family. And so what I really liked that it showed was that they weren't able to go to therapy. So they were really struggling with their mental health afterwards, but they couldn't go to therapy because that would involve telling people what happened. So they had all these untreated traumas, and I really like the way that that was portrayed in this book. So yeah, so far this year I've read a lot of really good books, but I think that this one is probably one of my favorites, and it will probably stay that way. So if you really want a thriller that's going to keep you glued to the pages, then this is one that I would highly recommend. This next book is by an author that's becoming one of my favorites, and it is Ward D by Freida McFadden. This book just came out, so I knew that I had to jump on it. But it's about a medical student named Amy who is working a night shift for the first time on a locked psych ward that's called Ward D. She's got a history with this ward too, so that's what's making her really nervous about working this night shift. And as a medical student, she knows that she doesn't want to specialize in psychiatry, but they're making her do it anyway. So basically, there's a very violent man that's locked up in the seclusion room, and they locked him in there because the night before he was saying that he was going to kill everyone in the ward, and so they had to put him away for everyone's safety. And throughout that night, Amy is hearing a lot of the patients say that he is going to come out and kill them, and she can hear him banging on the door, and so she really is worried that he's going to come out and kill her. But what happens is that patients are starting to disappear throughout the night, and while this is happening, other patients are screaming the man's name that's in the seclusion room, so it convinces Amy that this man has escaped and he's hiding somewhere in the ward and he's killing off everybody, but there's nowhere else for anybody to go because it's a locked room and nobody else knows the code but her and the staff members. And so really weird things start to happen. Just like in every other Freida McFadden book that I've ever read, this one was full of so many twists and turns. Just when you think that you figured out what's happened, something else comes and throws off your whole theory, and it has you second guessing everything. And so I just could not stop turning these pages because I needed to figure out what was happening, who it was, and it was overall a really good thrill ride. So yeah, definitely give this one a try if thrillers are your thing. And lastly, I'm still reading this one. I honestly just started it, but it's The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This book is about a woman named Emma who one day she reads a really shitty thriller book and leaves a 1-star review. And suddenly the author starts to attack her online and they get into a big fight. But then weird things start happening around her house, and she's starting to be convinced that it is the author that's doing these things to her. I can't really give this one the review it deserves yet, just because I only started reading it yesterday and I'm only a few chapters in, but honestly I'm loving it so far. Taylor Adams is one of my favorite authors, and I'm so excited that he's come out with this book, and I really, really like the concept because as an author myself, I could not imagine being that butthurt about a 1-star review that I would go and attack this person online. Really excited to see how this book ends, and I'm honestly probably gonna end up giving it another 5 stars because it's Taylor Adams and I've loved every book that he has ever written so far. So yeah, that's it for today's video. If you've been really liking my content, then I would definitely recommend hitting the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.